shows that it does change.
It will change it, but very slightly. And by, usually if the age is 3.7, it might go down to 3.6. It does change.
It does change the age?
Yes. But it will not change the age to as great an extent as changing the size of the plants.
Okay.
Instructions lie.
Yeah, the instructions said it didn't change the age.
Yeah, well, then I'll make that note to Capson, because I've been doing this now 7 years, and it's always changed the age. Not very much, but it changes the
Well,
age.
they said it changed the age, but when I looked at my fast track, my round one, it didn't change the age.
Oh, well, wait, isn't that the opposite of what you just told me?
No, that's what I told you. I said it shows on R&D, when you
Yeah.
type it in, the age changed.
But then it actually
When you
did.
went to fast track, after the round results,
Well,
it still.
maybe they were right.
Well,
Well,
but
wait,
when did it tell you that it was going to be effective?
That year, that same year, it was only a
Yeah,
slight change.
with the MTV, if you change the MTV out, and it will tell you that the age of revision has changed, but the actual revision date will come out in that same year. It's not very long to
Right.
make the MTBF happen.
Yeah, but with that though, the reason that it may be the same at the end of the round is because once you hit your revision date, you start aging from there.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
didn't
it's
think
so
about
small
that.
that it just doesn't make.
It is. Again, when it changes it, look at that age of revision date, and when you only change MTBF, it's gonna go down from 3.7 to maybe 3.6. It's like a tenth of a point at the most.
And also watch the date of the change, where it falls in the year.
Yeah.
Because if it's gonna be effective in March instead of October, then you won't have as, if it's October, it's not gonna age as much at the end of the round.
Oh, well, that's a good point before I get to you, Rick. How many of you didn't watch your revision date?
I cannot watch my revision tape. I think
Okay,
it's for the
and
whole
how
year.
many of you experienced this yellow line in the next round, you wondered why you couldn't change your product? All right, so how many know that that is a good tip for going into competition, that when you go ahead and change your size, performance, again, MTBF doesn't affect it that much, if at all, really. But size, performance, if you change those two pieces, especially with high tech, since you're really trying to move it out every round, watch that revision date. If you are working at the beginning of the year for 2013, you want your revision date to be in 2013 at some point. Because if it moves out to 2014, it will stick you in the next year, and you will not be able to move it again. That's not necessarily a bad thing for low tech, because do we move it every round? No, but it would be for a high tech product. If you get stuck in that next round and can't move it, well, you're basically screwed with a high tech product. All right, because you need to be able to move it every round. Watch that revision date. You want it to come out in the same year you started. Are you listening, Leonard? Or are you off daydreaming?
I just wrote every word that you said.
No, you didn't. Lies.
Wait a minute, wait, okay. I'm not lying.
Google eyelids, really? All right.
Okay.
You're off in space. Wanted to know where you were.
I'm not off in
Alright.
space. I was thinking about what you said. I wasn't looking.
I
at you.
believe Glenn. My questions are kind of like twofold. One, the question that he asked about the revision year, the revision date, is it better if it's closer, like in the year, like, does it matter what month it's in? And if it does, then how do I control that? Like what?
Well, you really can't control it for a high-tech product.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Well, you
Yeah.
can, it's controlled by the amount of change.
Okay.
All right. I'm getting, can I finish my sentence?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Oh, did you want to answer that question?
Yeah, I know, I did. Although you are very smart individuals. I had a however, okay? You really can't control that for a high-tech product. All right. Just simply because if you want the exact positioning, based on what the situation analysis is, you've got to put it out there. That does not mean, though, that you have to put it exactly in the ideal position. You could, as some strategies allow, push it out a little bit further and have it drift back, especially the idea, excuse me, one theory is that if you can push it out slightly beyond the ideal position and have that revision come at the very end of the year, then January 1, as it starts to drift back, for January, February, you're capturing all the sales of that ideal position right at the beginning of the year. Okay? The other theory is that no, if for some reason it's costing you too much, or maybe you're being pushed out to the next year, then get it as close to the ideal position as possible. Most of the time with a high-tech product, you're probably going to end up closer to the end of the year, but you don't have to. You can manipulate those numbers by 0.1, 0.2, until you get it to a point as close to the ideal position as you can, but at the date you want it.
My second follow-up question is, does lowering MTBF lower the age, or is that the opposite?
Slightly.
Lowering MTBF lowers the age?
Yeah.
More MTBF raises the age?
Yeah, changes.
Yeah.
Depends
Mo-
on
most-
which way you move it.
Well, yeah, you're right. It depends on what he said lowering the MTBF.
Yeah, I'm saying lowering the MTBF would lower my age?
Yeah, usually, yeah, you're gonna end up, but it's gonna be by 0.1.
Right, so, but could I potentially say, since I want an age of 0 all the time, do I want,
You could never change the MTBF to get your high-tech product down to an age of 0.
okay, that's what I'm saying, okay.
Okay, you'll never, in other words, once after that first initial year and you had an age of 0, you'll be at 1.6, let's say. If you change the MTBF, lower it with a high tech, which I don't really advocate, first of all. You'll go down, if you change the MTBF, you'll go down from 1.6 to 1.5. You're not closer to 0 at the end of the day. It's not gonna make any difference. You'll lose more sales with the lower MTBF.
Right, so there's, okay.
So, all right?
So with the low tech, you said, do not add them the other round
You shouldn't, and why not?
because of the age, right?
Because of the age, that's right, correct.
But, so when we say that, does it make sense to R&D in, let's say round 1, skip around every other round?
You could.
Is that
Or you could do it every 3 rounds. Given the fact that depends on, what cost you're looking at. If you do it every 3 rounds to really get it up to a certain age, then on that 3rd round, it's gonna cost you quite a chunk in money to be able to get it up to the right position. You might also suffer a great deal more in age as well. So, my theory is you do it every other round. But, there's nothing that's not to say it can't be done for every 3 rounds.
So a product like Able, would you follow the high-tech rule with that, since Able is kind of in the middle? High-tech, low-tech would
No,
be
you
your-
need to,
Depends on your
I understand
strategy.
what you're saying, but from the very beginning, you need to decide what Able's going to be. Okay, and if it's gonna be a low-tech product from round 1 through round 8, then let it sit. And round 1, if you wanna be a differentiator, you introduce a new high-tech product immediately. But if Able's gonna be a high-tech product from the beginning, then you need to move it out there in round 1. You'll suffer a little bit in round 1, obviously, but if it's coming out by round 2, then you're there. Yes?
If you let it go sit in round 1 though, you're kind of just flooding with the dotted lines.
No, you are selling to both segments.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is, if you're gonna let it drift, so to speak, then you're indicating to yourself and to the competitors it's gonna be a low-tech product. You need to treat it as such from round 1 to round 8.
Okay, so don't
You
go
do
in.
need to, no, and that's a forecasting issue. You do need to take that into account. But I'm talking just R&D, deciding what Able's gonna be at round 1.
Right, so don't just go in and say, okay, I want it to be low tech, 4.8. I mean, don't go in straight away because you just dropped it from the initial 6 point something that you started in, right?
No, I'm not, you can use that theory and say, I'm gonna move Able immediately into the low-tech position.
Yeah.
However, because the ideal position is the least of their worries,
Yeah.
I would let Able drift back and let it age.
And you suffer on the age equation too, if you move it to even more low tech,
Yeah.
then all of a sudden, then it's hard to match the age and the performance and size for that.
If that one is a good theory to combine, and you can have strategies that are hybrids. Between the life cycle focus and actually placing your product, there's not to say you can't use a hybrid of it. But, you know, with Able, I'd let it drift back. It ages it, and eventually you'll have to R&D it back forward, but it's gonna be a good age. R&D, no?
No.
No.
I wanna talk to you after class.
Oh, please.
Okay? I appreciate that.
I know, I know.
I just wanna make that.
Okay. Nick. All right. Well, you've got all different name tags, Mark. I mean, what am I gonna do? I mean, you've got blue steel on there.
I'm letting-
How am I supposed to know who you are?
Fast track for R&D, when we're making decisions and watching the decisions that the competition made. So say I'm in round 3.
Okay,
The fast track that I pull up for round 3 were decisions that say Digby or the other ones made in round 2.
what does that have to do with R&D?
Because I'm making decisions about R&D if I'm watching
All right.
what the competition.
Yes, and that's true. It's decisions that were made in the past. Correct.
That's very previous.
Correct. Yeah, and again, it's all, you're never gonna know what they're gonna do.
Right.
But at the same time, there's certain aspects that you can look at to kind of guess what they're gonna do. And that's where that fast track becomes very important to you. Because you know, or at least you should know by now, what each of these competitors are going to do in the competition rounds in terms of their strategy. Okay? How they acted with their strategy, let me make that point, just their strategy, in practice is how they will act in competition. They're not going to change their strategy. Tactics within the strategy, yes, they'll change. They have little algorithms that they go through, and they'll change their tactics to give you a little harder time in competition, but they're not going to change their strategy. So Chester was a product differentiator or a broad differentiator in practice. He's going to be a broad differentiator in competition. Question?
Answer my question.
Oh, there you go. You're welcome. Okay? They're not going to let you just roll over and, or they're not going to roll over and just die in competition. But that's, they're not going, Chester's not going to change from a broad differentiator to a niche operator, you know, from round 1 to round 2. It's not going to work that way.
Okay, this is still R&D related. The sweet spot, and demand are staying the same as they were during the practice rounds? The sweet spot for low tech, high tech?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, the situation, I thought you were, when you said demand, it threw me off a little bit, because the demand might
9%,
change.
21%?
Well, it might change based on, let me answer the sweet spot. Situation analysis, ideal position, sweet spot, from your situation analysis that you did, will operate the exact same as in competition. Use it again to position your products.
Okay, so we've got those in fast tracks.
You do, but you also have it in the situation analysis, you know, laid out very nicely in an Excel spreadsheet, which is why I told you to keep it, yada, yada, yada. The demand may or may not be slightly different, and why? Did you see how it changed slightly on the fast tracks? All right? For the most part, it's not going to change dramatically, but those fast tracks, at the end of each round, it will say the growth rate for next round will be. That's the piece you pay attention to. So they might be slightly different, but they're going to be essentially the same. All right? R&D, yes.
Number of products.
Okay.
So, depending on how smart you are.
No.
So the
It has nothing to do with smartness.
2, 3, 4.
I would do as many as you possibly could. I mean, that's my best advice.
Is it technology driven? So if I'm a high tech, might make sense to do more than if you're a low tech? So,
No.
Okay, it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter. The bottom line is go back to our unit we did on product differentiation. We talked about some managerial economics. You have a Colgate and a Crest and, you know, however many other toothpaste producers out there. And you've got Colgate that's got 50,000 different pieces of information given out to their consumers about how great their product is. And one has mint, and one has gel, and one has paste, and, you know, one brushes your teeth for you. that many products out there because they're trying to keep their customer base from moving on to a different product. So you might say, well, if I introduce another product in the same segment, are I not cannibalizing my own market share? Yes, to a certain extent, but your goal is to differentiate the product enough to steal more market share from your competitor. So you go in with two low-tech products, you have slightly different prices, you have slightly different MTBFs, you have slightly different positions, therefore age, and you'll have slightly different promo and sales budgets. What that will do is that when 1 year Able hits the market at an age of 7 and captures most of the sales, then next year your other product's going to hit the market and capture most of the sales. So that next year, when all of your competition doesn't have a great age, you do. Again, the more products, the better, as long as you take care of them. You know what the buying criteria is. You know that your low-tech people like a low price, high-tech people like a low age and great position. If you're not taking care of your products, then it makes no sense to introduce new products because you're not going to do well no matter what. But if you can take care of your products and really concentrate on your consumers and your customers, then you're going to do well. It doesn't take smarts. It takes paying attention to how you are treating your products.
So, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna ask you on the same, probably jumping a little bit ahead. When you have two low-tech products and you're forecasting, would that not then, you'd have to change the amount of teams? Because there's now seven products out there. You know what I'm saying? Like, if 6 of us that are working, however, you have two low-tech products.
Situational analysis, that's what he's doing.
So would you have to then put your forecast in for 7 products versus 6?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. Your forecast does need to change based on the total number of products in that segment. Absolutely.
So I think I heard a contradiction right.
Okay.
If you have two low-tech products, you said on one side, listen to what the customer wants via the buying criteria.
Okay?
On the other side, you said, I capture the market because I have more out there, but maybe I just change some little things to differentiate.
Slightly differentiated product. That's not contradictory.
Okay.
You're still meeting the buying criteria. For example, you can have two low-tech products that are $15.50 and $15.25. You still got low prices, but they're differentiated. You've got an MTBF, they want moderate reliability, right? So what was the normal MTBF for a low-tech product?
14,000.
No, the normal average.
Like
16, 17,000, okay? One of your products is 17,000, the other product is 17,500. Okay, that's what I mean by slight differentiating. They still both meet the buying criteria, but they are differentiated enough so that you are capturing your normal consumer or customer base and stealing customers away from your competition. Does that make sense? Now, again, some people are more risk averse than others. Some people will never ever introduce more than 2 products, and therefore you're going to run an average company. There's nothing wrong with an average company. There's not. It's a good, solid company. Those people that are risk averse tend to really take care of the 2 products that they have, really take care of their customers. Their customers are happy, but their business is not going to grow tremendously. On the other hand, you have those that are risk-loving who put it all out there in Vegas and lose everything. I'm advising somewhere in the middle. You can have 4 products and really still take care of those products and take care of your customers and really grow your business, because you can do it with a sound financial head, taking out money when you need to, avoiding Big Al, okay, forecasting correctly, and you can forecast conservatively as well. So it's just a matter of taking your time with this and really thinking it through.
The only thing is, you didn't do, let's say you did 4 products in practice, and then you download 4 products.
Well, how many did you do in practice? Okay, well, then I would try 3, because if you took care of 2, you can take care of 3 easily. There you go.
I think you said this, but I just want to be clear. So someone like Christian, if we give it out of park, he couldn't basically follow his exact strategy because the algorithms are going to change in this.
Yes, tactics will change in which, and that's a good point for everybody. You've got a strategy that you have chosen to go into competition. Now, that may have chosen from the initial assignment that you did, and that's okay. By tomorrow, the next day, whenever you start your competition rounds, choose your strategy that you want to carry out through the entire 8 rounds. That's not to say you don't modify that strategy to meet the changing marketplace. So, as you chose what strategy?
It was a cost leader with product lifecycle focus.
Okay, cost leader with, product life cycle focus, whole bunch of malarkey as far as I'm concerned. So he was a Walmart with a drifting strategy. That's not to say that here comes Chester and doesn't add a new product into low tech and high tech. And wait, they weren't there in practice, but that's still part of their strategy because they're a broad differentiator. They're going to maintain the same strategy, but they've chosen to add in a different tactic to try to take market share away from you, as they should. So yes, you're going to have to pay attention to the marketplace. Yes, you're going to have to change your tactics within your strategy to meet the demands of the marketplace and the changes. If you don't, and if you operate just as you did in the practice and no different, then that hitting out of the ballpark will be a little bump.
There's nothing wrong with the bunch, you can look at on first base.
Yeah, first base, and then when you get to second, you go. I feel no joy. All I gave you was advice to say, watch the market. If you're in a company and you're not watching what's happening to the market, then you're going to end up tanking anyway. Same idea. You want to watch the market to make sure that things aren't changing without your knowledge.
Are we going to discuss, so I don't want to jump ahead, so are we going to discuss what factors we should be looking at in the fast track? Because there's so much
Everything.
information. Yeah, it's like take a look at this entire picture.
Exactly. You have to. I'm sorry. That entire picture is important to your company.
I wish we had this. I think for future reference, it would have helped. I guess for any future students, like to say this is how you read the fast track. Because I had a hard time reading the information, so I had a hard time discerning what was important to me and what was not important to me.
I'm saying everything's
Yeah,
important.
I get that now, when you say that, but when I don't know that to begin with.
Well, but again, that's why we do the practice before the competition. That's why we have a debrief before we do competition. So you're aware of these things and you've kind of figured out the pitfalls before you get into competition. If we went through a debrief session before you went into practice and we didn't have one before competition, by the time this came around, you would have forgotten all of those.
Just to add to this, I don't think it's saying what to look into, but how to interpret and take that data back to the decisions you're making. That would have helped, because sometimes it's a lot of information. I know this is supposed to be played as a team, so somebody's just looking at what affects marketing.
No, not this one.
I know, but it could be played as a team, that's a
It
lot of
could be,
team
but
building
yeah.
caps in. And so sometimes you see the information, but don't know what to do with it.
I don't know.
Well,
how to
and
interpret
that's why I let you struggle in this one. And I don't let you struggle in capstone, because capstone's gonna be much more advanced and much more complicated. So, you go through foundation on your own, so once you get to capstone, you've already made it through this piece, and you don't have to worry about interpreting data. So there is a method to my madness to my
So there
method.
will be at some point a debrief of the foundation where we're gonna look at this data.
We're gonna do that in the spring, yes.
I just have kind of a question / comment. I get a little bit concerned when I hear the word struggle and the percentage of 40% tied to my struggle.
Okay, good. I'm glad. Life is a struggle.
So it's not like a grade.
See,
Yeah.
and if you're concentrating too much on the grade, you're not gathering the knowledge that you need to be able to, garner as much as you can from the simulation. I wouldn't worry about it. Did you do well on the practice?
Honestly,
Yes.
not particularly.
Did you call me?
Scared.
During practice?
I think we spoke a couple times, yeah.
We spoke during rehearsal. During practice?
Oh, rehearsal? Yeah,
No.
we spoke during
During-
rehearsal.
I
I
know.
contacted Caps in their home office because that's what you said to do.
No, but no, if you have technical problems. I said
I was having
call.
technical.
Technically.
I had technical problems too.
No, but you called me enough during rehearsal, but I didn't hear from you during practice, so I picked on you a little bit.
Sure.
Because, again, if you're having trouble with those bits and pieces, yeah, give me a call, shoot me an email, and we'll talk through it. And then maybe you won't
Struggle as much?
struggle as much, but again, there's certain struggles that do go on during practice, and they're made to be that way. So you can avoid those pitfalls come competition.
But we can still call you a competition, right? Just because maybe when you're practicing,
Oh, no. That's not what I said. I was just picking on him a little bit because he was like, yeah, I called you during practice. Let's see.
yeah, right there.
So, all right. Any more on R&D? All right, let's see. How about Adrian? We'll pick on Adrian for a little bit.
No.
Sorry.
Maurice, really?
Maurice doesn't have any information in his because he's not here. However,
Oh, no, I do, sorry, I tried.
there's nothing in here. It's competition round 1. Relax.
Is it gonna help?
No, it's not. All right.
I have one last question on R&D. Are we moving on to the next one?
Are you a reflector?
No, no. I'm not sure what I asked.
All right.
Yeah.
How do we translate once you hit the, recalculate in that first half? How do you translate those numbers you just entered to the next one?
To the what?
Meaning, they all kind of build on each other, right? Like what I do in R&D, of course, has a reflection of what I have to do market in.
Yeah, okay, not to the next round. You're talking about to the next functional area.
Yes.
Okay, well, let's
Just to summarize it.
So if we change able, and I won't save any of this, I promise, because I'm just playing, okay? And we change,
Teachers, guide, teachers login.
okay? Yeah, this is the teacher's login, but I can actually make changes to the students. So all of a sudden now I have a April 1st revision date with an age of 1.7, okay? What that's automatically going to do is it's going to factor into the benchmark prediction based on the information I entered into R&D. Now, the benchmark prediction is just that. It's a benchmark. It's the highest amount that you could possibly go on your forecast without any competitor decisions. It's like a pro forma. In other words, you use it as a guideline. You don't want to go above it necessarily, but that's not your number. But of course, Aaron used it as his number, didn't you?
I kept going above it. I was like, I can double this.
Oh, I did. Well, you know what? Let's go back. Oh, wait a second. I think we need to just go back. This might be fun. Yes, sir.
Okay, so go back to the R&D screen.
Oh, I'm already
Please.
past there. I'm gonna go pick on Greg. Okay, ask your question though.
Okay, so just reading that graph, it looked like, so if Adrian did nothing, her product was about 3.2 years old at the start of the year.
Yes, and April 1st, it went down to 1.7.
So by the start of the round, it's that, but if she did nothing by the end of the round, it would be
4.2.
4.2 years old. Okay.
Correct.
I just want to make sure I was
So,
reading that right.
help me with that though. We all started at 3, yes? No? What age?
Yeah, here, just hold on to that. I just wanna see for fun.
Yeah, well, no, actually, it's easier if you look at it.
Oh, look at that.
What?
Wow, 543 in low tech and,
I don't see what you're seeing, I'm
Just
sorry.
my inventory, that's.
hey Greg,
Oh.
inventory, that's a bad number. Wait, let's go back. Oh, wait, 0 in cash, let's see, where's that?
They said it was good to not have a lot of cash on hand.
That's the growth rate.
$21 million.
Cash is not
I read it, we didn't wanna have a lot of cash.
Cash is not king if you don't have any. In this case, it's a jester.
It's all right, man. Practice, practice.
20 million in inventory?
But he has net income. But he has net
No
income.
emergency loan. You not see the 21 million in emergency loan
He has
right
net
there?
income.
What did we just learn? in
We're
working
beating
capital
up
management
Greg
today?
Huh?
because we thought that the benchmark meant you need to go higher.
But to that point, though,
You
But
didn't
to
borrow
that
it.
point, that's a great lesson learned.
but so what's the right
That's your
approach?
treasurer.
So you might benchmark with the whole. Benchmark the rate of
Yeah, we're not there yet. Relax. We're getting there.
I got a question about the benchmark.
Well, we'll get there. We haven't gotten there yet.
She's making fun of people right now.
I'm just making fun of Greg. That's my only objective.
That could take the rest of the hour, though, I mean.
Well, we could, but we did, and we moved on.
I know.
Actually, we haven't spent an hour, because I didn't start till like 3:15, but if you want to get technical, I'm gonna answer this one last question about the age, and then I'll move on. Okay, the age right now, if you're looking at the age profile on the R&D, you do start out at about 3.2. Every single person is gonna start out with ABLE at an age of 3.2. If you do nothing to ABLE, by the end of the year, it will be 4.2. That's what that age, it always goes up by 1 year if you do absolutely nothing to it. Because it's aging that entire year. Alright? That's what that age profile tells you. Now, if I go in and make those slight decisions like I did before,
You almost always
okay? Then I move down to an age of 1.6, March 11th, and by the end of the year, I'll be about 2.4. Okay? So, in other words, if I want to operate ABLE as a low-tech product, that's not a good strategy because I'm going to actually reduce the age when I actually want it to grow. Low-tech.
What did you do? You increased the, you reduced
I
the
just,
size.
no, I just changed it. I didn't even look, yeah, okay, I reduced the performance and I think I reduced the size. I made nonsensical changes just to point out that any changes will automatically reduce the age. All right, so don't pay attention to the changes I made. Just know with a low-tech product, any changes you're gonna make are gonna reduce the age.
It reduces it by half, correct? Isn't that what the change does? It reduces the age by half?
Essentially, yeah.
Is higher better than, like, three, it says 3 is the target. If you're at 4 or 6, is that, do you need to be closer to 3, so you want R&D?
So if you're at 2.7 or 4.2, what's,
Say your product, that's all.
Low tech, you wanna be at 4 years.
Most people want to be at 3, and as you age more, they start buying less from you and go to the other low tech that are around 3, because it's their segment.
Yeah, but there's a range in there, a few points below 3 and a few points above 3, that they'll still be very comfortable in their buying criteria. It's when you really start to go probably above the 3.4, 3.5 threshold that your sales will start to drop off. However, they're more likely to buy at a slightly higher age than a slightly lower age. So the 1.6, you're gonna see a greater sales drop off than you would at 3.84, something like that.
But at this point, we're getting closer towards the sweet spot.
Well, no, I meant just with a low-tech product. All right, this has gotta be the last question for R&D.
Okay, are you a fan of dropping the MTBF to reduce material costs?
I am for a low-tech product, I'm not for a high-tech product, because again, it's based on that buying criteria. Because there's only moderate reliability needed for a low-tech product, reduce that MTBF, don't reduce it down to 14,000. Reduce it down to a moderate level, and that way it saves you money, but high-tech, they want a fairly reliable MTBF. If you reduce it, then you lose those customers. All right, now, marketing. So now, people 2 seconds ago, and now you got nothing.
Now we forgot our question.
Now you forgot your question. Well, you had a benchmarking question.
Yes, benchmark, let's start with that.
Well, hold on, Vanessa had her hand up first.
There's some, within the website, there is, a part that explains how to do the calculations. So for you to do your marketing forecast and your production forecast, where you get, the current sales multiplied by the growth, and then.
We did that last time at the introduction.
On the bottom part of the fast track, there is the potential market share of that, and it tells you to do this, put 90% of that number there, and 120% of that number within the production.
Correct.
I've done that throughout the 8 rounds. It works very well in the beginning, the first probably 5 to 6, probably first 5 rounds,
Okay?
and then it totally steers off your capacity forecast.
Okay, well then it will have to, then you need to go back into and figure out, was it an increase in the number of products that caused that formula to go off the mark? Was it your buying criteria that waned a little bit and thus caused that forecast to go off the mark? If you're keeping your forecast exactly the same throughout all the rounds, I can see where that formula wouldn't quite make sense, especially with the number of products that come in. For example, if you don't have a great number of products coming into the market, then your capacity needs, as you increase them throughout the rounds, will essentially, drive up at a exact same amount every single round, because you don't have the number of products coming in. But if you have a great deal of products coming in, and they're competing with your products, and thus your demand is going down, then your capacity needs aren't the same. Does that make sense? So you've got to go back and kind of determine from your competitors what was going on. And then look at your own buying criteria and see if you were maintaining your product, or were you really putting money into it and meeting that buying criteria. Because if you were just maintaining the product, then the first couple rounds, yeah, it wouldn't make much difference because the competition is slow to get those products out there, and especially in that low-tech area. But, if you were really looking, putting money into your products and making them good, and you didn't have a lot of products from your competitors in the market, then yes, I would question that. But I can see how that formula would change based on
The
that.
formula itself is not the one-stop shop.
No.
You have to consider
No
the
formula
rest
ever
of it.
is. You have to change your forecasting techniques with the changes in the market.